We're back in session. Can we get a motion to return?
I second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Cert cases, there was none, correct?
Right.
POB review of Garrity materials, there was none, correct?
Does there need to be going forward? Okay.
No. Okay. Okay. Reports from subcommittees, outreach committee, community outreach. Chantel?
Okay, so the outreach committee met on March 20th. We lost our chair of our outreach committee, so the end of the meeting, I think that I was appointed, not so much voted in, I think I was appointed as chair. So at our March 20th meeting, we discussed a couple of things. Chris Sylvan, the CPC manager, was in attendance and alerted us to the Public Safety and Consumer Protection Fair, which was attended on, the fair was held on April 3rd, and it was attended by Director Harness and Amanda Bustos, and then Board Member Larson, Board Member Fine, Board Member St. John, and Board Member Cass were all in attendance to that. So I don't know if any of you want to speak briefly to that.
I will. I think it was a really great experience. We had other agencies there. We had the ATF there. The FBI spoke. But it was really good for us to be there because now they know that we exist. And they had a lot of questions. It was great that Director Harness was there, so he could be there and talk to people.
Wonderful. Anybody else have any input? Awesome. Okay. Ms. Bustos provided us with a list of stakeholders that was then kind of divided amongst Board Member St. John, Board Member Fine, and myself as to contacting these organizations to see how we might strengthen the relationship and awareness of the POB and what we do and how we can advocate for members of the community. And we are going to be reviewing the I call it collateral material, but the brochures that are provided by the CPOA to the public, and those are placed in like public libraries and police departments so that people know who we are, what we do, and then there's a comment card, I believe, that is going to be attached to that can be sent directly back to the CPOA offices for the public to be able to make complaints or provide kudos to us for us to review. And so we're going to be looking at that by end of week and then providing feedback to Ms. Bustos on that. The flip side of that, the transaction, is that Ms. Bustos is going to be providing to the subcommittee kind of a skeletal outline to build from, for us to be able to build from, to provide a clear and consistent message when we are out among CPCs or just in the general public, events that we may attend. We have created a list of certain goals that we want to achieve and due dates for that, and so as those are kind of check marked off, we'll be reporting back as to what those decisions are, but they include things like what events, which is where the stakeholders came in, we should maybe have a presence at to kind of foster awareness within the community as to who we are. And Board Member Fine is going to be taking a look and coming up with recommendations as to our website, something that will maybe clarify or separate a little bit more, that not look so much like we're a part of the city, so that we are separate and distinct entities. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Oh, and we are changing, forgive me, we are changing our meeting times. It will still be the fourth Tuesday of the month, but we're going to meet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, same locations, but not 5:30 in the evening. Okay.
All righty, thank you. Policy and procedure.
I think in all the case reviews and all the talks that we've had, I've given you all the information. Does Board Member Larson or Fine would like to add anything?
Wait. We're doing policy and
Policy
procedure.
procedure. I'm getting tired today. cut ahead of Dr. Cass. Dr. Cass.
Just cut him right out, right?
Am I next?
You're next. Dr. Cass.
All right, Policy and Procedure Subcommittee met on March 22nd, and there was significant discussion on how we were going to go forward. And it kind of breaks into two schools of thought. One is process development versus pick a policy and make a recommendation. And we ultimately sort of agreed that we would try to merge those two ideas by creating a process for a policy that we picked at a mediated session. And that fell through when the participants at the mediated session decided that they weren't going to participate. So we're Member Cruz had offered to integrate these two ideas, that we have both a policy process and a policy that we're working on. And I think we can still work on this in the same way, but we'll do it in a regular subcommittee meeting now. So since then, I think there's been several individual members of the policy committee who've been engaged in various activities associated with making recommendations or collaborating on policy. And for one, I've contacted the ACLU, Paul Heidel, with regard to a proposal that ACLU actually received from APD to write a policy for governing the use of Stingray technology. And I believe I sent board members out a copy of a letter that was recently in the Albuquerque Journal that, or an article in the Albuquerque Journal that described the use of Stingray technology, but that it was also not very much was known about about control of it. So APD has actually reached out to ACLU to write this, and Paul Heidel of the ACLU and I agreed that this would be a good area for Police Oversight Board collaboration. And I followed up with him on another occasion as well. Actually, that contact occurred at the public safety fair that you just described. That was where I had a discussion with Mr. Heidel. I've invited him to present this policy, and at our next Policy and Procedure Committee, which is next Thursday, and we're going to have that at the normal time. And I've since talked to him, and he said that they have someone on staff who's already written what he considers to be a good draft of such a policy. So I think this is beneficial to both us and APD and the ACLU to collaborate on this kind of endeavor. So we'll follow up on that. I'd like to also point out that Member Larson has been actively collaborating with APD to improve the APD CYFD function, and I'd like to thank him for that. And there's been generally several interactions with Policy and Procedure Subcommittee members with APD in regarding the rewrite of SOP 352, as was mentioned earlier. So there's the next Policy and Procedure meeting will be on April 19th, and on the agenda will be ACLU. We've also agreed that we would like to brainstorm future policy recommendations, and a list was presented at the last meeting by member and a vendor. And I think we can work on this now with a little bit more preparation. So any other items that you might have available or have an interest in adding to the agenda, this is, let me know. So next meeting is April 19th.
And you will be selecting a chair during that meeting?
And we will vote on a chair at that
Thank
time.
you.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Case review.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I jumped the gun. Case review, I've already pretty much stated everything that happened in our last meeting, and I'd like to see if If Joanne Fine or Jim would like to add anything?
I
that
think we
missed
covered
in
it.
Okay,
Jim, did you have anything to
Okay.
add?
yes.
Director Harness? Sorry.
Yes, Chair Waits, fellow board members, regarding case review, you have in front of you a civilian complaint flow chart. Looks like it's this one here. And with it, you have intake criteria, and you have investigation process. The large item of discussion is administratively closed cases. As you can see, there was a significant increase in those. And as I've been expressing to the board for the past couple of months, the monitor is encouraging the CPOA to expand the definition of administratively closed cases. Ultimately, Mr. Giaquinto will take this to Dr. Ginger for evaluation. So starting March 1st, I established this intake criteria, and the criteria that we're using to evaluate an administratively closed case is in the resolve at intake column. And what seems to be the most controversial is if the investigator cannot minimally substantiate the allegations, then we're going to administratively close the case. So the investigator is doing a preliminary investigation. They are looking into the allegations, and they're trying to substantiate them to move forward minimally in some way. However, if the investigator is able to determine that the allegations in the complaint are wholly untrue, then we're going to administratively close that complaint. The other side is we could have an investigation without interviewing the complainant and without interviewing the officers and have it be unfounded. And at this point, I decided I would rather err on the side of having it being administratively closed as opposed to what the monitor would deem to be an inadequate or incomplete investigation if, in fact, we already know what the result is going to be moving forward. So that is the reason for the spike in the administratively closed cases. Now, the monitor may come back and tell us and give us different direction, but this is how we've decided to handle the issue moving forward. And when IMR 8 comes out, and if they say that's acceptable, then we will request the court to expand the definition of administratively closed cases. If not, then we'll take the next step, and we will have those cases be exonerated or unfounded, but it will be a less intense investigation if we know factually moving in that the allegations are not true.
So what you're saying is, that's why we have 38 cases and an increase? Okay.
Chair Waits, yes, that's correct. Plus, we are we have developed an internal monitoring system for timelines. The complaint comes in, and it is assigned within 1 business day, and then the investigator has 7 business days to do the intake to determine whether or not an investigation is going to take place. And that's how we're moving the cases forward. At the end of that 7 business days, that will start the 90-day investigation clock. If the investigation is to begin, then the information is input, and that starts the investigation timeline. That's in accordance with how the monitor sees the intake process being handled. And it was a bit nebulous, but for IMR 6, they put in place a hard line, 7 business days for intake and evaluation of complaints. That timeline will be told once we, that timeline will be stopped when we have the mediation program in place to allow the mediation to take place. But the only thing that's holding the CPOA and the POB from being completely operationally compliant is investigative timelines. So if this system works and we work the efficiencies and we are adequately investigating, which our investigations have been found to be proper and correct by the monitor and the DOJ, then we can move into that operational compliance phase and start our 2-year evaluation so that we can move out from underneath the monitor.
My other question is, how soon can we receive or be able to review those cases?
You mean the administrative
Yeah,
closed cases?
yeah.
They're on SharePoint now.
I mean, are they, how soon do you get, once you receive them, how soon can we review them?
Chair Waits, once that case is administratively closed, well, it's being a little delayed now because we're lacking in administrative assistance, but once that's closed, that's automatically put up into SharePoint for the next POB meeting.
Okay.
So if you go to SharePoint every couple of days, there will be probably a new case or two to review. So you don't have to be slammed at the end of the
Yeah.
month. We are constantly uploading those cases to
Okay.
SharePoint for the review.
That was my reason for asking that question, so, okay. All right.
Chair Waits, if I look at this chart that you presented, on a given month, if you get a set of, you get some number of complaints in, how do they fall out into these various categories? And will they, is there any way of accounting then for, on the agenda, I mean, is there a, can you do some bookkeeping and account for all the cases by looking at this chart and this and what's on the agenda, or do things kind of fall off the edge? I'm trying to, account for what happens.
Chair Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, no, we are tracking every case that comes in with our own tracking sheet from the time that it comes in, from the time that it's assigned, to the time that the 7 business days expires for either it to be closed or it to go to mediation or it to go for investigation. I believe that every civilian complaint that comes in will fit into one of these 5 categories, ultimately because the catch-all is it's a CPOA investigation. We are tracking those that go to the command and we get a response. We are tracking those internally. All other cases will have a CPC and will come to you either as an administratively closed case or investigated.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
I see the command. Give me an example of what a command thing is, because I would think that that was mediation. If the supervisor is going to be called in, I thought that that would be mediation. So what's the difference between mediation and a command? Does that mean that the command staff investigated it and gave you their report?
Chair Waits, Board Member Fine, an example of a command complaint would be a complainant would make a complaint, but then they would also stress that they don't want an investigation, that they simply want the officer to be counseled. And so then we would send that off to that command for that counseling to take place.
So the difference is a complainant wouldn't be involved in that process, just a supervisor and the
Right.
officer.
Also, any of the driving complaints that we get, the vehicle number is tracked to the command, and the command is then to handle those. It would be things that are very minor and perhaps don't fit neatly into our mediation definition at this point.
It makes sense. I
And
understand.
so, and we've had great cooperation. They actually tend to be more with the communication section, where,
You mean 911?
right, where 911 or 242 cops, a civilian has a negative interaction with an operator, and we will have Director Wilson look at those, and she will then talk to the complainant, and if the complainant is satisfied, she notifies us that the complainant is satisfied, and that's that. If not, then there will be an investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, great. Personnel subcommittees.
Chair Waits, if you all can pull out your personnel subcommittee operating procedure, that handout that I gave to you all. I put this together with the hope of, if any future personnel subcommittee chairs disappear or leave the board early, the knowledge that they have doesn't disappear with them. So this is a living document that I've drafted up, just going to, serving as the guidance and continuity for the annual evaluations for the director. So there's a purpose. Section 2 is the director duties straight out of the contract, and the intent there with that period on the first, or with that time frame on the first sentence, is that you update the director duties with each contract. Section 3.0, the timelines, outline city council action, personnel committee action, and POB action, and what month those take place. So I drafted that up. I'll need to coordinate with city council to make sure that we have their actions in place correctly, and we'll go over this again in the personnel committee meeting. Then we go out into the director evaluation and how we'll actually do that and conduct those SurveyMonkey surveys with the specific questions and the score from 1 to 5, et cetera, for POB members, CPOA members, and the other stakeholders, whoever we wanted to get input from. The scoring methodology, just getting averages of sums and using that number to provide input back to the director. So just for you all to be aware, that was my intent, is to create something that lasts beyond an individual committee chair, something that we can have with the CPOA as people roll over. One thing I did want to coordinate with City Council on is the social goals meeting. Is that a reoccurring meeting every year?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Cruz, yes, during the budget process, the committee of the whole meetings, the social goals, there's 3 committee of the whole meetings. One is social goals, second is physical goals, and the third is budget markup. So yes, those are annual.
Okay, so during the April-May timeframe, end of April, beginning of May, I believe, is the social goals meeting?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Cruz, yeah, beginning of May would be the correct time.
So here, Chair Waits, on POB action, the POB chair's attends social goals meeting in May, so that's your highlight that you'll have to get with City Council, or City Council will get with you and let you know that you should attend that meeting.
Okay.
Other than that, I will send this out electronically, make sure everyone has a copy, and then provide any input to me. And then our next meeting, I believe, should be that Friday that we get all the resumes in, or applications in, from new council. So that should be the 11th, May 11th is what we set as a date.
Yeah, that's when we said that the cutoff was, right?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and set the personnel committee meeting for May 11th. If we could get that 7th floor conference room again.
Wouldn't we
your
be,
building.
if 11th is the cutoff, shouldn't it be the next day?
Well, that would be a Saturday, so
Oh, I
let's
thought
do
it
the
was,
cutoff
oh, it's
at like
Friday. I'm with you.
noon
Okay.
on Friday, so we could
Okay.
have time to print everything out and
Smart.
review it. Would that work,
Yeah.
Director Harness?
Chair Waits, Board Member Cruz, we can try for that 7th floor conference room. If that's your preference, we'll try for that one.
I need something with, so we can have resumes out and
Right.
multiple copies.
That's
Right.
That'd be
yeah,
constrained.
that'd be fine.
Or we could have the basement room too.
Okay,
I'll try for those, because those have the large, enough room to spread out.
let us know. And then with the personnel subcommittee or committee, does the time work on Friday for you all?
On Friday, the 11th,
In the
what time?
afternoon?
In the afternoon, sure. That's for me.
So 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock? Let's start early.
Leonard, you're on that too. Does it work for you?
Yep.
Start early for other people, I'm sorry.
What time did you say?
4.
4 on Friday? I'll bring the tequila. No, I'm kidding.
I am, but,
Very good.
all right.
At 4?
4.
Okay.
Golf after. That is all I had, and I will send out the committee agenda later. But any questions for me?
I have applause for you. Thank you for doing this. This is great, the way you put this together. It's awesome.
And so at the meeting, you guys are gonna, what exactly are you gonna do at the meeting with the applications?
So that's reviewing applications, seeing what candidates are qualified and which can be submitted to the board for consideration. I believe that's the way we did it last time. So we came up
That's the
with
one we want you at, so you can help us decide who.
the 3
meets the
most
criteria.
qualified candidates.
But board member Cruz said I had to be on the committee for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
so.
There's only 2 things this committee's doing, okay? And one of them it doesn't do every year. The only thing we do every year is evaluate the director.
Okay.
And also would be drafting up a letter for city council on whether or not the board would want to retain Director Harness. That's another agenda item.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
That only takes half of your life.
Did you want to discuss this?
Yeah.
This is your questionnaire that you sent out?
Oh, so the questionnaire that I sent out last meeting is a part of this operating procedure now. I got input from people via email, so I
Okay.
incorporated that in here, and then if we have any updates, we'll discuss it at a committee.
And now that that is, you're comfortable with your questionnaire, how are things coming with Director Harness's contract?
So I called multiple times to city HR, and I actually made an appointment. I actually went to the building over and went up to the front desk and asked to speak with Mary Scott, and I was told to not do that, however, call the POC. I did, and she said, well, since I can't have my cell phone at my work, so I had to have Miss Scott call me at my desk, and she never did. So I tried to get back to her administrative assistant and couldn't get any response. So what my plan is to do is to make any changes to the contract that we see fit and then submit that to Mr. Moya and
Okay.
push that up, and then if they have any problems with it, we'll get that kicked back. But right now, I'm done working with city HR.
Thank you.
Can't say I blame
All
you.
right. Thank you, Board Member Cruz. That was outstanding. All right. Reports from city staff. Mr. Sullivan,
No, I think it's somebody from APD.
APD? I'm sorry.
I think that's John Sullivan.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Waits, board members, I have a couple of ways that we can do this. I met with several of you a couple of weeks ago. As you all know, that I'm the Director of Training for the Albuquerque Police Department, and we put together a modified Citizens Police Academy at the request of yourselves and some other folks. And I know several of you were in attendance of that. I met with some of the folks that were in attendance, and I was given some feedback. Executive Director Harness was also there and provided feedback. I'm ready to comment on what we've done since then because of that feedback. But before I do so, I know I've spoken with Board Member Galloway a little bit about it over the phone, and some of you we met in person. Does anybody else have any feedback that they want to offer me at this point before I comment, or would you guys like me just to go directly into what we've done since?
Let's go.
Go right ahead, unless
Okay.
you have a comment.
I just want to make sure,
Please do.
I don't want anyone not to have an opportunity to provide any more feedback that wasn't already given. I know that when we spoke on the phone, you felt like your fellow colleagues had given me pretty much how you felt about it too.
Right.
Okay, so, since that time, we're now actually in the process of the full Citizens Police Academy, the 12-week program. And we have had the use of force instruction as a part of that. I did attend in person to watch, and I did intentionally by design ask the same instructor to teach it. And the reason on that was twofold is, number one, I want to see if, after receiving the feedback that you guys had given me, which I agree, upon reviewing some of the video and after talking with you guys, there was a lot of unacceptable things that you had pointed out. I had a coaching session with him and his supervisor. So the first point of me bringing him back in there was to see if he was coachable and if he would be willing to listen to the feedback and change. And the second one was for me to sit there in person and actually grade his abilities to instruct and to see if he's still someone that's worthy of continuing instruction for the Albuquerque Police Department. So I did that, and I sat through the class, and I was very pleased, actually. He was a night and day difference from what you guys had explained and from the video that I actually saw, because it was recorded. So I saw pretty much everything you guys pointed out. We won't go into everything that you guys talked about, because I realize we're already at 3 hours on your meeting. But the issues, the whole class was different. I reviewed the PowerPoint for starters, and it wasn't presented at the same angle that was presented for you guys, which I know was a big bone of contention with yourselves and Executive Director Harness. It wasn't a law enforcement defense of why we use force. It was literally more of a facts of, this is the policy, this is some historical issues on force, and this is what we do. We didn't go into any specific. I know a lot of the things you guys talked about was an us versus them. That was not like that at all. He was very much professional. There was no scoffing or laughing, other than, I think, banter back and forth with the class, which I found to be appropriate. He absolutely reiterated one thing that I thought was very important, is that he does not feel, and he stated in the class, that he does not feel that the taser can never result in death. And
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
The taser does not result in death. And I know that when we spoke, when we met in March, that was one issue that Executive Director Harness had brought up that they had disagreed on in the past. So everybody has their opinion, obviously, and if that's his opinion, I can't change his opinion, but what he teaches needs to be factual. And when he went and he taught a few weeks ago, he absolutely taught what was factual. And that's what all I can ask of him. If he has his opinion about the taser, he needs to keep that to himself. He needs to stick with facts, and he absolutely did that. He didn't do any of the force science or the other things that we had talked about that I know that some of the folks that had issues with. All that was eliminated. And ultimately, as the director of training, what I've come to the decision was, and I wrote down the notes from 2 or 3 of you when we spoke that day, the modified Citizens Police Academy, when we do it again, which may not be until 19 based on our tight training schedule, is absolutely going to be a different curriculum than the regular police academy. And I think that's something, Dr. Cass talked about, and I know that Elizabeth Martinez talked about it. When you guys come to our Citizens Police Academy, you're definitely a different audience than just the normal citizen who maybe really doesn't have any knowledge of police tactics or training, and we need to start from that level. You guys, when you come to the class, while you are a student in the class, you're also an evaluator of police tactics and procedures. So the training that you receive or that is received by the next modified Citizens Police Academy will be vastly different than how it was received on this one. We also did a community policing segment already for the current Citizens Police Academy, and I reviewed that one, and there's absolutely no mention of broken windows. That's not an issue. It should have never been an issue, but it's not an issue anymore. It's a very progressive take on community policing. And as a matter of fact, we're actually in the process of revamping our whole community policing presentation. I'm working with 2 other commanders on the department, and we're going to create a very robust community policing presentation for both the cadets, the entry-level officers, recruits, and the officers department-wide, because we think that somewhere as a department we've actually failed in the past. So, short and sweet, but I do stand for questions or commentary if anybody has anything.
Is Mr. Lewis working with you on the community policing?
He is.
Okay.
I would love to go to that community policing, wherever it is, whenever you try it out, your first time, second time, whenever you're comfortable that you've got it where you want it, I would like to see that. So if it's possible for us to audit a class and watch that, your new thing be revealed, we would like that.
Yeah. Chairman Waits and Board Member Fine, that's absolutely, any of you guys are invited. So when we're ready to roll this thing out, I think it's going to be really good. I don't know if Mr. Lewis is still here, but we've had some meetings on it, and it's actually really exciting stuff. So I think it's going to be
I'm sure
very,
it is.
very progressive.
Good.
Any other questions? Please.
Commander Sullivan.
Hi.
It's nice to put a face with a voice and a name and all that good stuff. I appreciate the rapid response to the commentary that this board has expressed, and CPC members as well. I have a concern in the fact that Director Harness and I were shut out of of auditing that use of force, and I just want to get it on the record. We are citizens of this community, and therefore a Citizens Police Academy, I feel like, is absolutely appropriate for us to have attended that, but we're also part of the oversight arm of this community. And I'm hoping to continue having a good working relationship with you. There are areas of training I think you and I have talked about that I have specific interest in, and I hope that that doesn't happen again, but it did feel very, no thank you. Asking you twice, I think was unnecessary. It should have been absolutely come on. Okay,
I appreciate the feedback.
thank you.
I have a comment. I'd like to thank you for your quick response as well. And from what you presented tonight, I think you've been very thorough and sincere about your investigation and acting on what our complaints were. And I appreciate that, and I think it's very refreshing to see that. I trust you completely that this is the new academy or the new training schedule. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair Waits, Commander Sullivan, I just want to let you know I was at a CPC meeting and just recently, and there was a guy there that we had to actually restrain because he was such a cheerleader. I wanted to put him in, get him some pom-poms and short skirts. But he was just gone through the use of force stuff, and he was really, really thrilled. And I couldn't help but just think that there must have been some changes, so he was very, very happy. Not to say that, that he was an expert on it, but whatever you did, it impressed him a lot, the whole academy.
Thank you for the feedback again.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice
All
night.
right. Okay, City Council.
Is there somebody else from APD that's going to speak?
Is there someone else? Oh, please come down.
The restoring thing cracked me up. Hi.
Hi, and good evening. Chairman Waits and members of the board, my name is Mike Miller, and I am actually from Internal Affairs, and I'm the new commander of Internal Affairs. Recently, we had Jennifer Garcia there, and Chief Geyer has recently made some changes, and I got assigned there. So I'm happy to be there. I'm looking forward to working with everybody and moving forward and accomplishing the goals of the Department, of the CASA, of the DOJ, and hopefully things will be progressing forward. So I have some information for you that I think you get on your normal basis if you would like that information now, Chairman Waits. So let's just go ahead and I'll take some feedback on this. If you guys would like any other information later on down the road, if you'd like to see this changed, please let me know. So we're going to be looking at March 2018, and I'm going to start with the dispatch calls for service for APD during that month. We actually had 45,231, and that was actually an increase over February of approximately 3,200. And obviously we can attribute that to weather's getting warmer, people are getting out, and we always see an increase in calls for service coming from the winter into the spring and to the summer as well. So for our internal cases, we actually had 4 that were completed during the month of March, and those were all internal affairs investigations. None of those were area command investigations. We had one internal case that was administratively closed because there was a duplication of efforts based on the cases. None of the cases were mediated. And from the 4 that were closed, we had the following discipline. There were 2 verbal reprimands, and there was actually 1 suspension for 40 hours. In terms of our early intervention recognition system, we had 27 alerts that were generated for the month of March. And for the total pending IA cases that we have 28. And it looks like that's basically all of the statistical information that I have for you. I would stand for any questions on that, but I do have one other thing after that if there's any other questions before that.
Any other questions? No?
Chair Waits, I spoke with Member Fine this afternoon, and there was a concern about the ability to access some of the videos on evidence.com. And I just wanted to put it out there, if anybody's having any issues whatsoever, please get a hold of me or part of the staff, and we would be more than happy to resolve any problems whatsoever. Chair Waits, Ms. Fine, I believe we found out what the resolution was going to be. At no time are any of those I numbers going to be used in evidence.com. That's a separate categorization of things. So I'm going to get some information. We're going to put the right information in those cases for you so that you're able to pull those videos up easily.
So for the new members, this is a little confusing. It's
Okay.
more than a little confusing.
Yes.
So what we get from Ms. Nunez is the I number, but that is not the number you put in to find the evidence that's tied to that case. It's a different number. So my suggestion was that Ms. Nunez give us the I number, but also the number in evidence.com that goes with that, so that we have both pieces and can review all the evidence, which we haven't been able to do because of that.
Correct. And Chair Waits, Ms. Fine, Board Member Fine, excuse me. That's correct. And we're trying to also generate a link that actually sends those cases to you, where you could just click on that link and all the cases would be available. But sometimes that's not going to work, so we need to make sure that you have the correct information as well. So if that fails, we have a fallback where you're able to get that information. And just as a note on that, I know we do have some new members as well. I'm sure some of you have worked with Chris Wiggum. He's provided training, and I spoke with him today. If anybody needs training or needs a refresher or has questions, he said that he would make himself available as well.
He's a terrific trainer, by the way.
He absolutely is.
Chair, I have a question, and that is, what effort is being made to sort of organize these cases? I mean, I can access evidence.com, and when I get there, I find a case with 50 videos, of which there's no telling which are important and which aren't. And I was at a recent meeting where one of the lieutenants who reviews these cases talked about how she had spent 6 to 8 hours in reviewing a case the day before and 8 hours that day. But the result is that their review doesn't help us in our review. And I would wonder if, and she mentioned that the blue team did some organizing of this, and I don't know who the blue team is, but I'm looking for a way that information that's been reviewed can be put together so that when subsequent reviews occur, that it's a lot easier to do this process. I mean, we should know in advance that we're going to be looking at 20 minutes of crime scene tape being unrolled or a high-speed chase, one or the other. I mean, you would like to know that before you start down the path. So is there anything you can do to enlighten us on that?
I can.
I'm sorry.
She's
Chair
not
Waits.
Chair Fine,
Okay.
she's just Joanne Fine. But I can say to you, having done this for the longest time, the two of us, having done this, I can make a suggestion to you that works. I don't think, we've had this conversation before, Dr. Cass, and the concern is that we can't ask APD to tell us what evidence is important. We have to figure that out. So I'm offering this as a suggestion, as an alternative to asking APD to tell us what's important. I read the synopsis of the I-file first, and the testimony of the interviews of the people who are at the scene, whoever the shooter is, all the people that are actively involved in that scene, and that tells me what videos I want to look at, okay? That may tell me I want to look at all the videos, but it is, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Cass, but I don't think it's appropriate process-wise for us to say to APD, tell us which of these 50 videos are the right ones to watch. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I'd like to, but that, I don't agree, and that's why I'm asking the APD representative for his insight.
Chair Waits, Dr. Cass, all of that information that's contained in evidence.com is evidence. It is not anything that can be changed by anybody in internal affairs, anything that can be looked at to be made to see what you want to see. What's in there is only what's been on the belt recording, and it cannot be changed, it cannot be accessed and changed in any different part whatsoever. What I'm trying to say is basically what's there is what's there. Now, and you kind of see some of the issues that we're dealing with on the review of our uses of force. We have the sergeants and lieutenants that are having to sit through each and every one of those videos trying to find the correct information. And what's important to you may not be important to somebody else. Sometimes we do have bookmarks within those videos, but the videos themselves, basically all we're doing is we're finding the videos that are pertinent to the case number that you're reviewing. We check those numbers and assign those numbers to you for your review, and then send that package to you via the link. So I don't have an answer for you. I can work on it, and I can work with Detective Wiggum as well to see if there's some way of prioritizing those. But it is going to be incumbent upon all the members of the board to look at the information fully and review the videos as well.
I think your final statement was the right statement. It's up to us to review those. And we don't want them to prioritize or send us any special evidence.
I guess I'm
Maybe I'm
I don't want,
misunderstanding.
no, I don't want prioritization, but I think they could be annotated so that we know what what's contained in these videos.
Pertinent, yeah.
Yeah, what's pertinent. And I mean, what starts out as a fairly innocuous video where you have 10 or 15 minutes of, preliminary activity where where there is no action, it could easily be noted on the video that the action starts at a particular time on this particular video, and that would alert people to skip forward if necessary. I mean, that would be on us whether we miss something because we skip forward, but at least certain areas could be identified.
What if they miss something?
It would be helpful. I'm not going to lie. I have a job, I have a small child, I'm a single mother. I would appreciate not watching 20 minutes of somebody unrolling crime scene tape. I really would. I want to do a good job here, but I only have so many hours in the day. I'm not part of internal affairs to, sit there, and that's my job to do. If there's any way to flag it or something helpful to kind of skip through all that stuff, would be helpful.
I have a question. Is Sergeant Block still with Internal Affairs?
Chair Waits and Board Member Van Deventer, how do you Deventer?
Van Deventer, yes.
Van Deventer, excuse me, I apologize. Yes, he absolutely is. He's still there. In fact, he and his wife just welcomed a new baby girl, and he's working about half days right now, but he is still around.
Thank you.
One additional question, and I understand that this may also be something to discuss with our attorney. Thank you for being present. Garrity materials, we are already kind of charged with keeping that information confidential, and there are certain penalties and whatnot associated with that. Is there a reason that can't be uploaded either via evidence.com or SharePoint or something? I understand that the access that we have to it now was kind of a compromise, but we've been talking about at the last few board meetings a way to make that information more available to people who have jobs and can't be there during your normal business hours. Is that an option, or is there a specific reason why that can't be done?
Chair Waits, Board Member Galloway, being new, I'm going to be honest with you, I would have to look into that to get you an answer. I can definitely do that and see what we can do, and maybe get some advice from some other people as well. So I really don't have an answer, but I'd like to look into it for you if I may.
Thank you. Do you have any insight?
Chair Waits, Board Member Galloway, that was negotiated. The language that we reached was negotiated in pre-litigation with the union, and so that we struck the deal as to those parameters. If there was a major sea change in the views of the department and they were willing to work with the union to loosen that up, that would be one thing, but it was a hard-fought negotiation to get where we got.
And I understand that. I'd just be interested to see if that would be an option. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. I'll try to make it quick. Is the CIRT still in existence?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Larson, yes, right now, it's CIRT in terms of the use of force review.
Right.
And investigation, yes, sir. And what we've done recently, we're under the direction of Deputy Chief Garcia now. He's in compliance, obviously, you all know that. We have internal affairs misconduct, and we have internal affairs force investigations as well. And currently, that comprises CERT, and from my understanding is there are going to be some changes. They're going to do this, basically some of the same duties, but it may not have the same acronym. But they are in existence right now. It's a whole other division now that's focusing on the force, and they are making a lot of progress in a very short amount of time.
Okay. My understanding is, if I read the SOP correctly, that the CERT investigations are looking for systemic kinds of problems, and they're not doing an administrative investigation per se. They're looking for issues for training and different things like that. Is that still what they're going to be doing?
Chair Waits and Board Member Larson, I am not exactly sure on their mission. From my understanding, they are going to be focusing on the force investigations and any associated misconduct with that as well. So if they identify some misconduct, they will be conducting an investigation, and that could result in discipline.
Okay. Will that include officer involved? It will include use of force?
Yes, sir.
So if we get an investigation that's a use of force investigation, is it going to be different than the CERT investigation?
Chair Waits and Board Member Larson, I am not sure on that, actually, and
okay.
I don't have an answer for you right now on that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from APD that wants to speak? Okay. City Council.
Chairman Waits, members of the board, regarding the vacancy on the board, since the last time our office recommended appointments to the city council, our office received a few more applications, so we are currently reviewing those, and we'll be meeting soon to decide a candidate to recommend to the council. As noted earlier, Mayor Keller and his administration have submitted their budget proposal to city council. The council will hold the committee of the whole, the CAL meetings, to amend the budget before voting on approval before the end of May. The CPOA budget is included in this, and we just want to make the board aware, as Board Member Cruz mentioned earlier, that the council will be holding those committee of the whole meetings on Thursday, May 3rd, Thursday, May 10th, and Thursday, May 17th. Again, as Board Member Cruz noted, probably the May 3rd meeting, the social goals meeting, is more appropriate for CPOA and POB issues, but those meetings are held in this same room. And then after those committee meetings, it goes back to full council for final approval, and that will be done by the end of May. Lastly, just wanted to update the board on the council's March 19th meeting. They approved O1755, which prohibits city boards, commissions, or committees from organizing, sponsoring, advertising, or hosting political forums. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
In the interest of expediting this meeting, I just wanted to point out or mention that we've had a series of ongoing meetings with council members, and just to quickly review that, it started back on February 7th with Ike Benton and Valerie St. John, and attended, as well as Director Harness. And the purpose of these meetings was to alert the council as to the proposed ordinance changes that have been approved by the POB, or recommended by the POB. And since then, we've met with Councilor Sanchez, and that included Chantel Galloway. And on March 12th, we met with Councilor Winter, and Jim Larson attended that. On March 22nd, we met with Cynthia Borrego, and that included Chantel. And on April 2nd, we met with Pat Davis, and Leonard Waits attended that meeting. On April 26th, we have a meeting scheduled with Councilor Harris, I believe. So that's the status of our meetings. They've all been well received, I think, and they've all dealt with the subject of the ordinance changes and the relationship between the council and the POB. So,
Chairman Waits and Board Member Cass, thank you for that. And we have 3 more to go, and I should be getting some proposed times to you here shortly.
thank you.
Okay. Any questions, any comments? Thank you. Okay, Mayor's office. Nope, nope, okay. City Attorney? Second time up.
Chair Waits, board members, good seeing you again. As far as updates, I would say, so we received the order from the court today that the stipulations, so the importance of the stipulations, you had the 2. One suspended the application of paragraph 308, and that related to the reporting. So we would have had IMR 7, but instead we're going to have the 2 reports from the monitor that are due end of May and August, I think, if memory serves correctly. So those have been ordered. That one's been ordered, so that'll happen. The second one are the amendments to the settlement agreement. So those all surround use of force, of course. And that also has been ordered. The importance of that is now the city and the department can get those policies through the policy development process. Behind the scenes, after the negotiation of that amended settlement agreement, those policies have been kind of starting to pick up steam. They'll be just as a preview, they're going to be broken out differently. One of the biggest problems with the use of force policy suite before was that the academy wasn't involved in its construction. And so for that reason, you saw the policy being taught by different aspects of the department, which was highly problematic. So it was very purposeful that the academy was involved in the negotiations of that language to the extent that we talked to them before, DC Garcia and I, before we went into meetings. And now, as that policy is being developed, the academy is having a lot of input on that. They're in the conversations. And you're going to see breakouts. So you'll have what is now 252 in a policy, so the use of force. You'll have ECW in a separate policy. You'll have de-escalation in a separate policy, intermediate weapons in a separate policy. And that, I think that, if memory serves, that's the way you'll see it come through. I think it's a vast improvement, especially with regard to de-escalation. As the policy stands right now, I think it's 252-4C. There are only 2 or maybe 3 provisions that deal with de-escalation, but that's going to be a separate multi-page policy that approaches, really it's instructing officers about de-escalation, and it's going to be a training policy. I think that's one way that I would look at it for sure. The intermediate weapons aspect of the new policies is going to talk about the weapons right now in 252. You have it all in that kind of chart. It's going to be its own separate policy in explaining weapons and the use of weapons and certification and those types of things. So I think that's a real high-level kind of brief overview of what to expect coming forward from those policies. Then you had Board Member Larson had a couple questions for Commander Miller, which I can address. I think if I can remember both of them, I think it was at least 2. So the critical incident review team, you're correct. It does report to the Force Review Board about tactics, equipment, policy, supervision, and training, and that's at a high level. So it's macro, systemic issues, as you said, for the department. So if it's policy language that's not addressing a concern or there's a gap there, then certainly it could be reconsidered, and that's at the 5th floor level. And the same with equipment, tactics, and training. There are, however, those administrative investigations, and right now, the critical incident review team is housed in internal affairs for that reason. Moving forward, those investigations will be done within the force investigations section, which again will be housed in what is now administrative support or services. Someone just told me literally an hour ago, but I forgot. But importantly, you'll be able to have those administrative investigations coming out of level 2 or 3 use of force. The level 2, if memory serves y'all, those are the ones that just result in pain or injury. And then the 3s would be what you see now as quote-unquote serious use of force. That phrase is going to be nearly stricken from the amended settlement agreement. But those are canines, more than 3 ECW applications, baton strikes in a certain number, and those types of things that are going to certainly result in injury. And I think most importantly, if I was in your chair, I'd want to know or understand that you can have those internal affairs investigations initiated as part of those. So you don't have not a redundancy, but a pass-off between those investigators and an administrative investigator, which has led to problems in the past. And the only question I had was, I'm getting the notes from you so that I can get those into an email and get those out tonight to everyone?
Oh, can I type them up for you? I don't think that my notes as they stand are going to be very comprehensible to a
Okay.
third party, but I can type them
Okay.
up for you.
Okay, well then,
and get 'em
after
to
the
you in
meeting,
a
I can give
day
you
or
my,
so.
I can give you my email and I'll be looking for 'em.
Okay, I
Okay.
have it in my Outlook. I'll email it. I'll email
Okay,
it.
great, I'll be looking for 'em.
When will, have these new policy changes been given SOPs numbers, or is there a way to sort of look at the structure of this new system on paper?
You know, Chair Waits, Board Member Cass, no, they haven't, and because this is a kind of a revamp of it, the numbering hasn't been sorted out, but I would anticipate 252 will stay 252. 253 will be, I believe it'll be ECW. 254 will be intermediate weapons. 255 will be de-escalation. And then there's a definitions SOP. The structure of them will be very similar. It'll be, you know, the same sort of outline structure that you see in the SOPs. And now that we have that, and literally was today, the first step is to start to have, once that draft is created, to have conversations with whomever from POB, whether it's that policy subcommittee or whatever. I'm a huge proponent of getting those conversations started very early and as often as needed, so that, you know, we're not having to have, let's create the wheel here on the spot conversations at POB meetings.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, just backtracking here. When we started, we had IA cases, we had CPOA cases.
Mhm.
Then we got Force Review Board and CERT. And I think that as you drift through these things, I'm sure your conversations with Mr. Harness, update him on all of that, but I really would appreciate when you change those things if you tell us about it. Because we have CERT on our agenda, and there's no CERT cases, nor were there any last time. So I'm confused because the names keep changing, the boxes keep changing, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of it all. So if I understand you right, we are going to get Force Review Board cases in 2 and 3. They're separated forces now, 3 levels, and 2 of them will come to us. Is that correct? Force Level 2 and Force Level 3?
That is correct.
Okay, and officer-involved shootings are in 3?
Correct.
Okay, so are we going to get CERT cases separately or not?
Chair Waits and Board Member Fine, I'm not completely following what you're saying because they're one and the same. If you have a CERT case,
They
it
didn't
goes
used
to
to
FRB.
be one and the same, so they may be one and the same now, but they
No,
weren't before.
Well, CERT is presenting every serious use of force to FRB. So you don't have a CERT case that doesn't go to FRB. So I don't know how your agenda is taking that into consideration, but that's the process.
Okay. Okay,
Okay. Any other comment?
no, thank you.
Oh, Chair Waits and Board Member Fine, and I don't remember who it was, but one thing that I would say, because I have reviewed enough of these investigations, and I've had the same, you know, I haven't seen the crime scene tape problem, but that, what I'll recommend to them is, as an investigator, there's not a problem putting parenthetically where that evidence is found, because you're still dealing with evidence. And so as someone who's reviewing it, certainly your obligation is to look at it holistically, but I think you should have some sort of guidance, and just saying, whatever lapel 3 minutes and 15 seconds to 4 minutes, I think that would be hugely helpful.
I think you're
And I'll
right.
pass that along.
That would be great.
Sure.
Any other comment? Thank you.
City council, city attorneys, Ed. Oh, we had it,
Yeah, we did. Chris?
he's right there. Chris is right there.
I had it on one sheet, I have 2 of these.
You got mine.
Probably be good. Keep going down. I'm gonna move over so my nuts are so close.
Good evening, Chair Waits, board members. It's late, so I'll go real fast. You're welcome. So last Saturday, Stephen Rickman from the monitors team was in town, and he was giving technical assistance to the CPCs. 27 CPC members attended the training, which was held at the main library. What the training consisted of was reminding the CPC members why they're doing it, and he asked them direct questions. Why do you do this? And there were some good answers, and they got back on track with their mission and their goals. I asked the CPC members that were there, I told them, I said, we're pushing members your way, so if there's a chance that your boards get full, please make sure that you let these people serve on committees or something, and they thought that was a great idea. I also suggested that they attend POB meetings, because I don't see a problem with cross-pollinating our work. Our work is similar, and that's not a problem with me. So, where am I? So the people that spoke at the meeting were Elizabeth Martinez after Stephen Rickman was done with the training. Mr. Harness spoke there too. Commander Sullivan and Burke also spoke there, and I appreciated their help. So that's all I have to report out.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? No? Thank you, sir. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
waiting. Mr. Harness?
Good evening, Chair Waits, fellow board members. First, I'd like to introduce our new Senior Administrative Assistant, Katrina Sagala. She'll be starting on the 30th. The final draft of the, with comments of the data contract MOU went back to the City Attorney's Office this afternoon. Our agency is going to be getting access to Tiburon so that we have access to APD reports. I'm assured by the end of next week that our staff will have full access to all videos on evidence.com, have the ability to preserve them and tag them, and have the ability to download those. I've sent out the proposed budget for the CPOA, and Chair Waits, I will get you the time for the meeting on May 3rd. The budget is at the 0.5% level, and it is at the new projected APD budget level as well. So it increases our budget by about $200,000. I will be at the Academy for the new cadets on the 23rd of May at 12:30. So any of you board members that would like to attend that session, May 23rd at 12:30 at the Academy. And lastly, early registration has opened for NACOL. NACOL is going to be in St. Petersburg, Florida. The dates are from September 30th through October 4th. So as soon as you know that you would like to attend, please let me know so we can begin to make those arrangements.
Last year, we had a choice of going to a Daigle thing or the NACOL thing. Is there a second choice this time?
I could arrange, I could look at some other options. We were hosting a specific internal affairs training that was appropriate for the board. If you come up with some other options, you could certainly present it to me and I could take a look at it. Other than that, there is a use of force symposium that the Daigle group does in November in Connecticut, sometime around the Thanksgiving holiday. And I can get you those dates, or if you have some other alternative training that you would like to go to, I will emphasize, however, the ordinance highlights NACOL as the training for board members. But for those that have been to NACOL, I think the monitor doesn't mind that you go to other trainings. So anyway, that's all I have, so I'll stand for questions.
Where did you say NACO was going to be?
St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah, that's right.
It's, I believe it's right after hurricane season or right before. They said they planned around it. I don't know.
It goes through November, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So then maybe it's just before.
Okay.
And if
Questions?
anybody wants to strike up Trombone Shorty, hurricane season, I'm more than happy to
Chair
hear
Waits,
that
I know
song.
we want to get out of here, but I really think that we should move these reports from the city, APD, and all of that to the front of the agenda, somewhere in the front, so they don't have to sit here and listen to us. And I think that's an easy thing for us to pass. We could say that we will let you decide where you want to put it, but move it someplace else on the agenda. I make that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I definitely don't oppose. I think that's a good idea. Thank you. Is there anything else we need to discuss? Our next meeting is May 16th, correct?
Correct. That's a Wednesday.
That's
We
a
had to move
Wednesday.
because of the city council's budget talks. So it is a Wednesday, 5 o'clock here.
Okay. Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying around, Chris.